And let's just see, we've got this clip of Mitchell.
Good morning, everybody. I just flew in yesterday, so if I sound a little spaced out at times, I do apologise. To a certain extent, I have some of the media on our side already, but we still have to be creative. We still have to be intelligent about what we put out there and when we put out there. Why did we get the likes of David Beckham coming in to support us very early on? Why did we get certain newspapers, News of the World, of course no longer exists? That's another story, I'll tell you about that separately. The younger the child, the bigger the story is. Photogenic child on holiday, the mystery of how come she could be taken from her bedroom on that night of May the 3rd. That mystery remains unsolved to this day. We, people who have been close to it, genuinely do not know what's happened. There is no evidence to suggest he has come to physical harm. There is no evidence to suggest he has come to physical harm. That they somehow were allegedly involved. They are not. I state that categorically from the outset. They've been examined by at least 4 different law enforcement agencies. There was no question of them involved beyond the fact that they took a decision to dine some distance from the apartment on the night with their friends constantly checking. They might, I should add, they could have had, if they'd been able to have, a professional nanny service, which wasn't available at the time. It wouldn't have checked as frequently as they were checking with their friends. As Miranda said, I went out originally as a civil servant for the Cabinet Office, so I was there as a neutral to help them with, as part of the consular package of consular assistance that is given. If you lose your passport abroad, you can go to your consul, your embassy, and you can get assistance. We had Portuguese pride and cultural differences. Why do these crazy Brits want to put their children to bed at 7:30 at night? They should be out with us at the table having wine till midnight. That's just how it is. And of course we had the forum debate, the multiplier effect of the wonderful joys of the blogosphere. We all blog. I'm sure I'm looking at many, many bloggers here today. Absolutely fine. Blogging is, in fact, a fantastic innovation, but in the wrong hands, with people who have a set of preconceived notions and prejudices, it can be just as destructive as sitting in a mainstream newspaper. So we had to deal with that and the constant monitoring of that. There are still 2 or 3 anti-McCann forums in existence to this day. Who still rail against the situation. They are all wrong, I might add. But essentially I had to sit down with Kate and Jerry at different times and say, right, we've got to define our central theme here, we've got to define our core messages, our key messages. You need to stick to them in the interviews that we're doing. I will stick to them in the public communications that I'm performing. And essentially the focus was always trying to bring it back to finding Madeleine. John Corner, a godparent of Madeleine's in Liverpool, he was already pumping out high-definition video material of Madeleine from previous birthday parties and family events, even before the Portuguese authorities had confirmed that she was missing. There was so much material on Madeleine coming into the BBC central newsroom, into the hub that brings in all the social media, the user-generated content, as they like to call it, that the BBC actually had to tell the family to stop sending us this stuff. Who is this girl? We don't even know her. And it was only later that morning that finally, grudgingly, confirmation came out from Portugal that yes, police were looking at this and that a British child had gone missing. We had to maintain the momentum throughout all this. As I say, we had to keep bringing it back to the search. It was always about this witness appeal, this sighting, this piece of information, not... We established a website for Madeleine very quickly. That's still there, still running to this day. It acted as a portal for information tip-offs, sightings. And journalists who were coming to it cold would have just done a quick Google search, read whatever it was in either indigenous media or international, and that was the truth in their eyes. It just isn't the case. So we had to keep constantly putting things in context and explaining it. Evening Standard in London, police name McCann as top suspects. What's a top suspect? A middle suspect? A bottom suspect? Again, it's hype, it's hyperbole, and all it was that they were given this arguido status, which in reality meant that they, if they wanted to, could have a lawyer present with the interviews that were being done. Kate, at one point was advised, having done 4 interviews where all the questions were answered, she was advised finally on the 5th time with this status not to answer anymore because you've answered it several times already and you don't need to incriminate yourself, because it was clear that certain officers were beginning to go down that route without any evidence. So to this day, it's held against her online. Why didn't she answer all these questions in that interview? They never realised that she'd already answered them 4 times in previous interviews without a lawyer present. We had to occasionally threaten legal sanction with some of the denials because some of the allegations were so lurid and so wild that if we didn't, it would have entered the narrative to the extent that we wouldn't have been able to claw it back. My role requires tact, diplomacy, and absolute common sense, and being utterly straight with the media. If you're straight with the media, generally they will be straight with you. Various ITV strands, BBC strands, and Hello campaign in Britain we did for the 1st anniversary. We did Oprah Winfrey in Chicago. The Americans very concerned about the story, even though they accept she probably isn't in America. But nevertheless, there's still American traffic there. We have an ongoing relationship with Crime Watch, which is the major criminal investigative program which works very closely with the Met in Britain, and if the Met want to do something for Operation Grange, they'll use Crime Watch as their vehicle of choice, and Kate and Jerry are very happy to do interviews for that. They tend not to want to do wider interviews these days because they've done so many. And we have monitoring continuously online of the various flora and fauna online, some of which is none too pleasant. And we have a team of online supporters who help us with the monitoring as well, a number of women who are very concerned about Madeleine in America. We had a trip to meet the Pope, the then Pope, Pope Benedict, just in the first few months, very soon after she went missing, partly because I was told privately that the Holy Father himself was watching it on television. And we were able to organise an audience with the Pope, which meant a great deal to them. We have legal action continuing against a particular former Portuguese police officer, Mr. Amaral, who wrote a very unpleasant book. Alleging, in essence, that Kate and Jerry know what happened. They've covered up the truth since then. It's just not true. It's fundamentally untrue. And therefore, ergo defamatory. Going through the Portuguese courts at the moment, it's a very slow process, but that is still ongoing. And again, there is a certain amount of attendant media around that needs to be controlled and managed.